Hello, and welcome to the beautiful Costa West region, where people and Pokemon not only live, but thrive. At the center of the region, we have the illustrious Pokemon Research Facility and Championship Arena, sponsored by the wonderful people at Porico. You may know Porico from their fabulous innovations such as the Poriphone or Poridex. Odds are, you have one of their inventions in your pocket right now. Now, without much further ado, let's take a look at some of the latest creations that the researchers over at the Pokemon Research Facility have been cooking up. While we understand that the names Giovanni, Getsis, or Cyrus may cause some discomfort, at the PRF we believe that evil may shroud the genius of innovation. Using technology recovered from the fallout of these criminals' demise, we have been able to reconstitute the base elements of their research and use it to better both humans and Pokemon. For example, it's no secret that Team Rocket used radio waves to force evolution upon a Magikarp, thus creating a red Gyarados. But combining this technology alongside something that we're calling our secret sauce allows us to artificially manipulate the genes of more docile Pokemon into a new and exciting possibility. For this first Pokemon, I wanted to combine the idea of Team Rocket's radio waves and our secret extra thing, our Chemical X, if you will. The Magikarp was lucky in that the excess energy had somewhere to go in an evolution. But what happens to a Pokemon that doesn't have an evolution? Nowhere to put that extra energy. I looked at Pokemon like Primeape as an example, and how it can just get so mad that it dies, and it turns into Annihilate. It evolved solely so that it could adapt to this added rage. For this design, the PRF has taken a Heliolisk and added these same practices. All for the betterment of the human and Pokemon world, of course. But in this case, I took into account the idea of a lizard like Heliolisk and how its nature, when threatened, a lizard will drop its tail, or even a limb. This form is so full of this excess energy that it has lost these parts of itself, and even that wasn't enough. Its neck flaps, once used for generating electrical energy, now swell to hold in the mutated spectral wisps that fill its body. This is, by all means and definitions, forced Pokemon variance. The PRF believe that by causing this variance, they'll be able to better understand Pokemon and people. They believe that this will bring the world closer together. But consider dog breeds, how they were manufactured to accomplish specific tasks at the loss of the aspects that made them canine in the first place. This isn't a big PSA on dogs or animal experimentation, even though that is terrible. This is a look at what would happen if we took the technology utilized in the Pokemon world and took it to its exact extreme. And in this case, we can see that. We can see what happens to a Pokemon when these experiments and ideas are left to fester and grow. And in that way, we get something much more different, much more exciting in a new variance, but at the same time, something that makes you think a little bit harder about what this technology was in the first place, and the corporation that's using it to create these new and quote-unquote exciting Pokemon. Variance is cool. Something introduced in later games that we're all super excited for every time we see it. Obstagoon is one of my favorite Pokemon, and while it's not a convergent line, it is a regional variant. But what happens when we decide we want those now, and we want them the way that we want them? And science and business are happy to satiate us. And so, for better or worse, the PRF is happy to introduce you to Heliolisk, the Lost Pokemon. It is a ghost ground type. It's shiny, kind of capturing that yellowish hue that we see in the initial Heliolisk. Rather than having two possible abilities and a hidden ability, Heliolisk only has one singular ability. This is one of those things that we lose in the translation of nature versus science. It has the Dread Skin ability. Now, what is this ability, and what makes this such a dangerous Pokemon to be escaping out into the wild? Well, the Dread Skin ability allows this Pokemon that once fainting, it can regain half of its health as well as get a boost to all of its stats. So you really have to fight this thing twice, kind of mimicking that idea that the dropped tail or limb is only a distraction. The main body of this Pokemon is only a distraction, and it comes back with half health and random stat increases along the way, meaning you'll have to adapt to the true form of this Pokemon, which is already half dead. For this next Pokemon, we move away from forced variants and instead look at a Pokemon designed around gene manipulation. We're aware of Simisage, Simipour, and Simisear, and their relation and alignment to the starter types. However, this didn't sit right with the PRF researchers. I tried to stop them, I tried to talk them out of it. I promise you that I did, but they were convinced that this could work. After all, the Kanto region actually has 4 starters, they'd say. And so, the being unhappy with completeness, they created something to match Pikachu's electrical typing in the Kanto region. Taking the DNA of one of the 3 monkeys, the knowledge of which is yet to be disclosed, researchers molded it while still within the egg. But what of the pre-evolutions, you may say? What of Pansage or Panpour and Pansear? Well, Pikachu was a starter bypassing the inferior Pichu, and so the scientists became so enamored with the strength of an evolved form that they bypassed it, jumped straight into something that they call Pansurge. Each of the monkeys also is based on one of the following: see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. Panpour has its eyes closed, Pansear had a hand over its ear to hear better, and Pansage is the only one of the 3 to have its mouth open in official art, having its hands on either side as if shouting out to the world. However, this leaves one of the evils to go without. Simisurge represents do no evil, with its hands crossed, and yet it holds a devious face. Perhaps it was the scientists' efforts to leave evil out of the equation, or their research into the villainous teams spread across the room that this Pokemon would see every day while still being tested, understanding and learning of these evil groups, while growing and changing and trying to become its own Pokemon. Monkey see, monkey do, after all. And so here we have Simisurge, the high voltage Pokemon, an electric type. Much like the other monkeys in the trio, its shiny represents just a more vibrant version of its original color. Its stats reflect the same stats that we see in the other Pokemon as well. This Pokemon, while kind of fitting with that same energy of the monkeys, it has a deviousness to it. It has this trickster type of personality, and even further, it only has the ability Lightning Rod, which is the hidden ability of most of the others. It only has the one. While it may seem that there's something extra going on with this design, the scientists still choose to label him as a success. New and terrible. That's how it was described to me. With the supposed success of the previous experiments, the researchers began to go bigger. Much bigger. They wanted to astound the world with what they had accomplished, and in the words of Dr. Ian Malcolm, they were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. If we want to go big, they'd say, then we should go as big as we can. It was then that they ventured into Galar and uncovered the phenomenon known as Gigantamax. All Pokemon Dynamax, but only so few Gigantamax, and they wanted to change that. Create a level playing field, they'd say. And so they started with a captured Carnivine. Often overlooked for more interesting Pokemon, they began their experimentation, exposing it to Gigantamax energy slowly at first in an attempt to change the physical appearance, but they became too greedy. Instead, they created this half-formed amalgam of evolution, Gigantamax, and of something else. It grew in size, true, but it also grew in ferocity. The halls of Wing 7 were overgrown in these vine-like tendrils, and researchers who ventured too deeply, well, they turned up missing. It appeared at first glance that Carnivine had reattached itself to its plant-like ancestry and began to flower, but this was no ordinary flower. It became a maw of teeth and spore. Oh, the spores. As they grew, it would explode these spores from its original mouth while the new one was left free to consume. Its arms grew into these thorny extensions, and in the confined space of the facility, it began to weave over itself. The original assumption was that it was becoming more plant-like, and that turned out to be false. It wasn't docile or stoic as a plant is. It was hunting, and had taken its horde, this Wing 7 wholly For itself, the wing eventually was closed down, and the rumors began to circulate of this beast, this dragon guarding the wing. Soon it slipped from scientific fact into ghost story. When designing this form, I wanted to take inspiration from things like SCPs and the Backrooms, make this feel like a horror story. I still wanted it to have some of those Pokemon aspects, but very much on the verge. Kind of like when you look at Pokemon like Eternatus. It doesn't feel very much like a Pokemon, and yet it is, canonically, fully, 100%. That's what we're told. It's kind of a Pokemon. And I wanted to do the same here. I wanted to create something that stood right on the edge of what we understand a Pokemon to be. It's scary. It's devious. It's monstrous. And so I have this large head that kind of bursts from Carnivine's mouth. It becomes this flowering bud, and I know that Venus flytraps, which Carnivine is based off of, don't have these flowers, but bear with me for a little bit. It becomes something else entirely. I wanted to apply that dragon typing to imply what's going on in this story. To create the story of this dragon guarding this wing, this sector, its revenge on those who created it. And so I had this flower burst forth, much like a snapdragon type of flower. Interesting thing about snapdragon flowers, when they dry, they become these skulls. It becomes almost this horror story type garden instead of this beautiful, wonderful little walkway that was initially anticipated. And so I went with that idea. What if these flowers became monstrous? What if it burst and budded, and the evolution of this Pokemon existed at some point in history but was never meant to be trifled with again? It was luckily weeded out through history and time. And then we come in and we bring it back. Think like Jurassic Park. I quoted Ian Malcolm earlier there, but that's kind of the idea here, is what if we could bring back these ancient and prehistoric things, but what if they just don't get along with us? What if they choose that it's their will over ours? And that was very much where I went with this Carnivine, Gigantamax, evolution, what have you. The idea of biting off more than you can chew, and a Pokemon that's about 90% mouth feels like that's the way to go. Sure, I could have gone with a Pokemon like Mawile, but with the whole story of wanting to make something new and kind of quote-unquote even this playing field, Mawile already has a Mega. So I wanted to pick something that really doesn't have anything. And Carnivine is honestly one of my favorite Pokemon, and I know a lot of people don't think that. I don't know why. They consider it boring, or they think there's other cooler Pokemon around, and that may be true, but I remember first seeing Carnivine and being introduced to that generation. I fell in love with the thing immediately. And so I introduce you to Sporovine, the Snapdragon Pokemon. It is a grass dragon type with the ability Spore Spreader. What that ability is, as far as I see it, being that this is kind of a boss type monster, is that every turn it spreads a different type of spore. So if you're lucky enough to kind of heal yourself of paralysis, you better hope that the next one isn't also going to be paralysis, because you're going to be fighting your way through this thing, kind of attacking and going at it while being afflicted, or while having your Pokemon afflicted, I should say. You can tell that in its size, it's not much bigger than your average standard large Pokemon, and that was kind of the idea. It's not a full Gigantamax. It has that energy and that aura, but still, it's a regular Pokemon, as much as a regular Pokemon could be. I actually posted this in the Discord, just kind of as the silhouette there, and a lot of people were saying, oh, it's Alien. Oh, it's this character or that one from the Backrooms, and that fully made my day, because I thought I'm capturing what I'm trying to capture here. It feels alien, it feels foreign, it feels extraterrestrial, it feels monstrous, it feels like something out of a nightmare, and I'm hoping that I was still able to capture at least a little bit of that Pokemon energy. Like I said, I kind of wanted to divert away from it a little bit, but I wanted to keep some there. For its shiny, I decided not to go with the standard Carnivine more vibrant colors, but instead to go with this zombie type aesthetic. It looks like it's dead and decayed, and I love it. It looks terrifying. And yeah, I just dig this Pokemon so much. It may not look like your standard Pokemon, but it looks like something I'd enjoy, and I do. I'm really excited to explore some of the Costa West region's story and kind of what to expect in this type of regions. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. You can always like, comment, subscribe. Again, all of those are great ways to let me know what you think of this video. You can also hop into the Discord where, as usual, I drop a lot of hints about what's to come and what's going on. You can find me on Patreon and Ko-fi as well for different hints here and there. The Patreon has actually gotten a couple brief glimpses into what's going to be coming with the Costawas region as well, so there's great spots to find me there. And with all that said, it sounds like you know where to find me, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!